Chapter 9 is going to be about weight management. In the US, one of our biggest health concerns is obesity. It's something that is continuing to spread all over the US. If you look at this over here, it's showing us how the pattern is continuing over the years. You'll notice that starting off in 1995, we didn't have much obesity. And then going over all the way to the other end in 2010, now the obesity has increased tremendously. We have even some states like Texas, for example, that have over 30% of their population as obese. So it's something that is increasing every year. We want to go ahead and take a look at some of the things that might be causing obesity so that we have a better idea of how to handle them. The first theory is that it might be genetics. Now, some people are more predisposed to be overweight or obese. It could run in the family, but those individuals don't necessarily have to suffer from being overweight or obese their whole life. They just have to be a little bit more selective with the foods that they eat and make sure that physical activity is part of their regular lifestyle. Another theory is the imbalance in certain hormones that regulate your appetite as well as the amount of calories your body uses. We have the hormone ghrelin that makes you feel hungrier and burns less calories. So it makes your body burn less calories, decreases energy expenditure, and makes you want to eat more, increases your appetite. On the other end, we have the hormone leptin, which is going to do the opposite. It's going to make it so that you don't feel as hungry, it's going to suppress your appetite, and then it's going to increase the amount of calories that your body burns. So leptin and ghrelin do opposite things, and usually they're in balance to make sure that you aren't going to be eating excessively or gaining weight unnecessarily. Some people have an imbalance when it comes to the hormones leptin and ghrelin. Some people will have a genetic deficiency where their body doesn't make much, if any, leptin. And remember, leptin is the one that is going to increase the amount of calories your body burns and decrease your appetite. So we really want that hormone to be there. Otherwise, ghrelin will just make us hungry all the time and decrease the amount of calories our body burns, which will lead to weight gain. For these individuals, once you give them leptin, their body is able to manage their weight a lot better. But this won't work unless they were actually deficient from leptin in the first place, and it is a very rare condition. What is more common is leptin resistance. Leptin resistance is when the body makes enough leptin, but for some reason, the body just isn't responding to the hormone. It's as if it doesn't recognize it. This is something that can happen with age, but also if you have a high sugar diet, it can happen earlier on. In particular, fructose. Any type of sugar can increase the risk of leptin resistance, but too much fructose gets you there quicker. So that can be something that you want to watch out for. If you think about the bad rap that high fructose corn syrup has, that is one of the reasons for that. Remember, fructose is something that we called our fruit sugar because it comes naturally from your fruits. So you don't want to eliminate fruits because you're concerned about this. You want to try to eliminate any unnecessarily additional fructose that is added into foods. It could be including high fructose corn syrup or just straight up fructose added into foods, but those are going to be the ones that you want to limit. Now, one thing that you do want to watch out for if you are trying to lose weight is following any kind of fads. I'm talking about fad diets that are supposed to be short-term, extreme. For example, you have the grapefruit diet, where you're supposed to eat only grapefruits for every meal. That's something that's going to help you lose weight, but you're probably not going to want to just eat grapefruits for the rest of your life. So once you stop this diet, it's very likely that you're going to gain the weight back. So you don't want to do those fad diets that aren't something that you can actually continue with for the rest of your life. Another thing to watch out for are weight loss supplements. Even if they are herbal supplements, they can still be bad for you. The weight loss supplements are something that are supposed to be regulated, but there are just so much out there that it's not something that is able to be very tightly controlled. A lot of times they have found that when they did an audit, these weight loss supplements were actually not listing some of their active ingredients on the bottles, because if they did, they would need to take them off the shelves because of health concerns. And so it's not something that you really want to risk. Now, as for what we do want to do to lose weight, this is going to be determined by your risk of health conditions, your risk of death, how overweight or obese you are. So for somebody who is in a very bad health situation where they need to lose the weight now or they're going to likely die soon, those are going to be the individuals that want to take some more extreme measures like weight loss drugs and surgeries. Now, the weight loss drugs that these individuals would get are going to be prescription. There are two main prescription drugs that are FDA approved and considered to be safe for the public to use, but these are going to be prescription only, and the doctor isn't just going to give them to anybody who is falling in the BMI category of obesity. This is for individuals who are at a really high health risk. Another thing that can be done is surgery. So the two main surgeries right now are gastric bypass and gastric banding. Let's go ahead and take a look first at gastric banding on the right. With gastric banding, the surgeon is going to go ahead and place a band at the very top of the stomach and tighten that up so that it's a very small opening. What that is going to do is the individual who is eating only has that little small pouch above the band to fill with food, and then they're going to start feeling uncomfortable. They need to wait until the food is dripping, basically emptying into the rest of the stomach, till that pouch frees up and they feel like they have space to eat again. So in a way, it's going to force the individual to watch their portion sizes, and in that way it's going to help the individual lose weight. Now, for the gastric bypass, it's a similar concept because they have that little small pouch of a stomach again, so you can only eat a little bit at a time, but instead of letting it slowly empty into the rest of the stomach, we're just going to completely bypass the stomach. We're going to skip over it, and we're going to skip over part of the small intestine as well. They actually cut off part of the small intestine and attach it to that small pouch to create a new passageway for the food. What this does is it allows the food to leave the body a lot quicker. And because of that, you're going to have less of the food digested and less of it absorbed, which will make it so that some of the food that they eat doesn't actually count. So it is going to be something that is more severe. It's a much more invasive procedure, but it can be very effective for individuals who are very severely obese. Now, the issue with this one is since we're skipping over a large part of the stomach and some of the small intestine, these nutrients are going to possibly not be digested and not be absorbed, which can lead to nutrient deficiencies. Whereas with gastric banding, we do have a foreign object in the body, but it is something that is reversible. It's something that you can tighten or loosen depending on your situation. and you aren't risking the risk of deficiencies. For individuals who don't have such a severe case, we can do smaller changes to the individual's lifestyle, to the individual's diet. And what we primarily want to do is make changes that the individual can maintain throughout their lifestyle. So, for example, you want to start teaching yourself to eat healthier, picking things that are healthier alternatives to the foods that you already eat. And you want to make these changes one at a time. So, for example, maybe you drink 3 sodas a day. Maybe you can start bringing it down to 1 soda a day. Or maybe you can switch them over to diet sodas. And then when you are comfortable with that, switch them over to water. Once you have your drinks down, then you can go ahead and focus on changes with your food. Maybe start eating a smaller portion of dessert, or swapping out your dessert for a healthier alternative. And these changes, even though they might seem little, they do add up and eventually lead to a weight loss that you can maintain, since these changes aren't so extreme. Another thing to consider is that you do want to be realistic about your rate of weight loss and how many calories you're restricting. Obviously, if your intake is less than your output, you are going to lose weight, but you don't want to cut out too many calories because then you won't be able to meet your nutrient needs. A healthy rate of weight loss is about half a pound to 2 pounds a week. The number that we want to try to stay above is 1200 calories, because any less than that, it's going to be really hard to meet all of our nutrient needs. Another thing that you can do is watch your portions. Eat until you no longer feel hungry rather than waiting until you feel stuffed before you stop eating. And then also remembering things that are going to keep you feeling fuller for longer. Remember, we said protein is something that is going to keep you feeling full. Also, water is something that gets rid of the feeling of hunger, because sometimes you think you're hungry when in reality you're actually thirsty. And it's something that can also fill up your stomach. And then we know that fiber and fat can get you to that full feeling quickly. So you want to make sure that you're including those in your diet. Lastly, you want to make sure to include physical activity. This is going to be something that is going to help you lose weight because it is something that increases your metabolism. It also builds more muscle, and more muscle means even higher metabolism in general, not just when you're working out. So it's going to help you lose more fat, and if you do something that is really enjoyable. So for example, if you like to dance or hike or whatever it may be, doing those instead of walking on a treadmill, for example, are going to be things that you will more likely continue, since they are things that you enjoy. But the one thing that I do want to point out is the theory of spot reducing. A lot of individuals think that they can spot reduce, which is working out a specific body part because you want to lose fat from that area. Now, if you think about it, when we're trying to lose fat, we are trying to get rid of our fat cells, or the fat in our fat cells. But when we work out a specific body part, we are moving the muscle in that area. So those are two completely different things, the fat cells and the muscles. Moving that muscle is not going to do anything to the fat cells that are in that body part. And so they actually don't influence each other, they don't interact with each other. All you're going to do by working out that area is tone up by building more muscle, but the fat isn't necessarily going to go away. Your body is going to get rid of fat from the area where it stores it the most first, because that's the most efficient way for your body. So it'll be different for everybody. The one exception to that rule is aerobic activity, like your cardio activity. Those activities actually target the fat cells in your abdominal area, so in your stomach. So if you want to lose the fat in that area, cardio is going to be something that will help with that. Now, one other thing that is not necessarily diet or exercise but can help is watching out for your environment. For example, they have found that the atmosphere that you're sitting in can make you eat more. For example, dim lighting tends to, people tend to eat more when they're in dim lighting. They eat more when they're sitting on a couch as opposed to a chair for some reason. Also, if you have more fattening options in easily accessible places, you're more likely to eat them and more likely to overeat them. So these are some things that we talked about before that you can implement here as well. For some people, limiting the amount of choices on the table can actually really help as well. For example, when you have your Thanksgiving dinner or when you go to a buffet, you want to put a little bit of everything, and by the time you're done doing that, you have loaded your plate a lot, and by the time you finish it, you're stuffed, you've overeaten, and you didn't really mean to do that, but you just chose a little bit of everything and it added up. And so for some people, limiting the amount of options on the table will prevent them from overeating. Some people, it is better for them to buy things that are already portioned into individual serving sizes. So for example, instead of buying the big family bag of chips, getting these small lunch sizes that are meant for an individual serving. For some people, that is something that can help them control their portion sizes. Now, obviously, preventing weight gain is going to be better than trying to lose the weight. If you put on the weight, remember, once you gain weight, what actually happens is your fat cells expand, and then your body makes new fat cells to store more fat once those fat cells can't fit anymore. But when you lose weight, the fat cells that are now empty will shrink in size, but the number will never change. So if you gained 50 extra fat cells when you gained weight, when you lose the weight, you still have those 50 extra fat cells. And that's why people who have been overweight sometimes have a harder time managing their weight, because they have all of these fat cells already there, ready to store excessive fat. And so if you can prevent the weight gain from the first place, it's going to be a lot easier when it comes to your weight management. And for preventing weight gain, it's basically the same strategies that we just talked about, where you are making healthy food and lifestyle choices. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the underweight individuals. These are different than the eating disordered individuals that we discussed. These people aren't necessarily trying to be underweight, but they just have a hard time gaining weight. It could be their genetics, their metabolism is really high. It could be that they are in so many different sports that they just can't keep up with the amount of calories that their body uses. But either way, these are individuals who are having trouble maintaining a healthy weight. For these individuals, we're going to want to do the opposite of what we recommended for weight loss. So we want to try to get them to eat larger portions, eat more snacks even if they're not hungry. We want them to drink their calories. Usually we say try to make your calories 0 calorie or really low calorie. But for these individuals, we want to limit the water and have them drink more juice and milk with their meals, because that will add on the calories. We don't want them to fill up their stomach with 0 calorie water and then not be able to eat enough calories to maintain their weight. So we actually do want them to drink higher calorie beverages. And then we also want them to exercise regularly. So sometimes people will think that exercising for underweight individuals is not a good idea because it'll make them lose weight. But right now we are giving them a high calorie diet to try to get them to gain weight. And we don't want all of that weight gain to be fat. So we want them to have a high calorie diet plus exercise, which will allow them to build more muscle as they gain the weight and rebuild any muscle that was torn down.